Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Dinner Table Detective Season 1, Episode 10. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This particular case hits close to home. I guess technically the first case of this series hit close to home for Reiko, but this one, proximity-wise, hits close to home because it's literally a murder that takes place at a neighbor place, and she's struggling with how do I show up at the crime scene and investigate without people recognizing me, which they never really do. They constantly reference the daughter of the Hoshio family. Oh, she would probably be around your age, and I don't know if they ever exactly said you look like her. Maybe they did, but it's I guess they don't see her enough. Plus, also, every time she's just Reiko Hosho, she's got her hair down and stuff. So when she's just heir to her family, she's wearing nice dresses and she's got her hair down and wearing makeup. Versus her hair's tied up, she's wearing glasses and she's wearing a suit. So that's enough to probably especially if you don't meet Reiko in the high class society type of thing. If you don't see her in that setting and on a regular enough basis, you probably wouldn't put two and two together. But I love just the whole Kageyama just being a trolley as take off your glasses, put your hair in front of your face. More. Now they won't even be able to recognize you, and she looks very much like God, what's her name from the Ring? But yeah, it goes to the crime scene, but when they are interviewing the witnesses, she's got the book in front of her face and she's trying to cover it up. But the woman that was killed was Kyoko. She was left in a bed of roses. She even has strangulation marks on her neck. So it is pretty insensitive of Kyoshiro to come up and be like, oh my god, what a beautiful situation because of the flowers and stuff like that. Not necessarily talking about the beautiful dead lady, but still. But yeah, we get introduced to this very prominent family. There's the father, there's the mother, there's Toshi, who is the fiance. Well, yeah, because they weren't engaged, but they were planning on getting married. So, and then we have a relative, I'm blanking on his name, Yuji, I believe. And then there was it Minako and Masahiko? Minako is the daughter, and then her husband is Masahiko. They were obviously all on the premises, and everyone had basically split up to go to sleep. All the men played mahjong, but after midnight, they split. So, it kind of could have been anyone, but then it's revealed. And, once again, you got to give props to Kyoshiro because he does figure some things out. He's like, right, they must have transferred because they ended up checking out the little house area, the kind of guest house area that Kyoko was staying in, and it was trash. He's immediately making correlations to the last case where he's like, hey, maybe, the fact that she's not wearing shoes, did they kill her just to kind of screw with the, where she was killed and stuff like that. So it's in this annex room, it's it's trashed up because they're trying to hide the evidence. But it's but if she was in fact killed here, why would they go through the trouble of putting her body in that particular greenhouse with all the roses and stuff? Because that's so far away, you could just as easily not only be caught, but also it's quite the endeavor. No matter how light she is, it's still you're lugging a dead body. So it still would have been a lot. But it turns out it still ends up being the case. That ends up, in fact, being the murder scene. And you also got to give it props to him for picking up on subtle clues, because he's the one that noticed that the father, the brother-in-law, as well as the relative Yuji all had marks on their hands from the thorns. So it's all three of you work together, but they're no, I forgot, was it them saying Masahiko was the one that didn't want her body left like that? I think they said they were trying to, because I know the mom said like I told him not to disturb the evidence, but I think they suggested it was like Masahiko was the one that was the most like thrown back by it. I think they said that, which obviously that key and a very important thing in that capacity. But that was their way to be like, okay, it's all fine. Then they also bring up Minako saying she saw someone with a, wheeling somebody in a wheelchair around 1 o'clock. But the husband and wife are like, no, that wouldn't have been us that early in the morning. Um, so it had to be the killer snuck in, stole her wheelchair because it's the only wheelchair there, and wheelchaired the body to the garden. And so there's also the missing cat because Kyoko had a cat named Tingo, and they end up stumbling across uh, Minako's daughter. Was it Rika? And she's looking after the cat who's been injured. And I love the back and forth where Kishiro is like coming off looking creepy, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not an old man, and I'm a young man." And Minako is like, she's like, because the daughter's like, "Mommy, that young man is acting scary." She's like, "Young man? He's not that at all. He's an old man." But the moment Reiko got the scratches on her hand from the cat, I was like, that's where I pieced it together. I was like, they're covering. That's what the thorns were about. The killer was trying to cover up the wounds on their hand to hide the fact is that because the cat got injured during a struggle. So like when they were killing Kyoko, the cat tried to attack the assailant and got injured in the process. Also, really quickly, I love that poor Reiko having to deal with like the insults flying her way because the daughter didn't think much of didn't really have a high opinion of Reiko because she's like, oh, like the fact is, oh, she can't be that great because she's just wears makeup and pretty outfits. That kind of makes up. That's what makes her stand out. Like she's not that great without all that. And even saying like, oh, she's probably running a business right now, having no idea you're shit talking her right in front of her. And also later on. It's revealed when Reiko accidentally lets it slip, like, oh, I'm familiar with these flowers because I have a set at my house, which the dad's like, that's not possible. I'm the one that kind of deals with these flowers directly, and I only specifically give them out to people we're associated with. In fact, we gave one to the Hoshio family, like, oh, now that I think about it, you really do. And she's like, oh, crap, no, 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 and runs away. But they're like, she's too clumsy to be Reiko. Because, I mean, she tripped over her own feet and then she proceeded to crawl away. I was like, Jesus, Reiko. And they're like, well, she's so ungraceful, it can't be her, having no idea. Like, no one's ever, like, the only people who really get to see the real side of her are her friends and Kageyama, because even Kishiro, like sometimes when she's like speaking her mind, it's always in her head. She puts up a pretense of like, well, you are my superior, so I can't really talk shit about you. I can do it in my head where you can't hear me. So Kageyama, I love that. It's almost like him calling her out, where it's like, are you even trying at this point in time with these investigations? You're always wanting me to give you the answer. He's like, I'm just so disappointed. I would have thought you would have matured at least a little bit, but you haven't matured at all. And she's snapping at him, being like, I so have matured. I believe I've matured a fair bit. She's flipping out, proving how much she has not matured. But he ends up laying out the investigation about, well, a key detail I left out is finding out that Kyoko was a hostess, which I'm sure that probably also did play a role in why the dad wasn't too keen on his son marrying her. Probably never. I don't think they directly said that, but you can probably imply that aspect is probably why. But that night he did change his mind, which is kind of heartbreaking. And like, oh, the father finally gave us permission. Sadly, it was too late. In fact, him giving permission for the marriage is what incited the murder, but we'll get to that. Kageyama ends up confirming, he says, like, right, if we go by what Kiyashiro said, then, the crime scene being where it is, the fact of the matter is, why did the killer need to go all the way to that specific place? There's plenty of other flowers around, but why'd you specifically choose that place? And then ultimately it's, because of the thorns. It turns out the killer was scratched by the the cat and covering up the thorns like I was saying. So there's that. And then it's like, well, that gives us three suspects, but then it narrows it down to two: the son-in-law and the relative, Masahiko and Yuji. Because the father, why would he need to cover up his wounds? He deals with the flowers all the time, so like he wouldn't have to worry about like thorns on his hands. He wouldn't have to go out of his way to concoct and find a place to cover up his wounds and stuff. So then there's also the cat being in the shed. And I love, I initially thought like, oh, did they lock the cat in the shed? But then it's kind of like, well, there's no point to it. And even Reiko being like, oh, maybe the cat let themselves in. It's like, oh, there's plenty of videos of showing how smart animals are. And then he's just like, yeah, Lady Reiko, like the cat was also injured, so I wouldn't have been able to do that anyway. It's just like, Jesus, he's just like, you just keep disappointing me, my lady. It's just, no wonder so many people continue to like basically bully you and talk shit about you. She's like, the only one who's bullying me and talking shit about me is you on a regular basis. But either way, it's most likely the cat snuck in there when the killer went into the shed, because there's a stroller in there. So it wasn't the mom's wheelchair that the killer used. It was a stroller to transport her body. And now it's like, right. And also the flowers themselves are also symbolic in why this murder took place. But then we find out, like I said, it is the father, the son-in-law who killed her. I was curious. I was like, what was the motive behind this? And caught him trying to like destroy the stroller because there was evidence on it. I love like Reiko dodging him and then like tripping him up. I was like, hey, that's pretty smooth. But either way, it turns out because of Kyoko being a hostess, one of her pictures online on like her social media, like the guys that she's being doing her hostess gig with, like those guys, or the clients, their faces are covered up. But the problem is the flowers in the picture plays into what the father said. Only very specific people are given those flowers. And this guy married into the family, so of course he'd have those flowers. Plus he has a very unique watch because Kishiro brought it up like, oh man, that's a very unique watch. I have one too. But that's what this is all about. He was trying to cover up the fact is he was going to a hostess while he was married. And the moment he found out that Kyoko was going to be welcomed into the family because the father gave the blessing, it's like, oh, I have to kill her before she runs her mouth. It's not even like a blackmail situation like last episode. It never came up. It was just his paranoia because he is married into a very prominent family, and something like that would be scandalous and it would destroy, and he'd most likely get kicked out of the family. So it wasn't even really to protect your family. It was in your self-interest of it's a prominent family you would have been kicked out of. So it's sad that it's really heartbreaking that like Minako has to hold their daughter as she's crying for her dad. It's like, ugh, that sucks. And once again, knowing like that's the reason why, it's like, I wonder did Kyoko not even recognize him, because who knows how long ago that was. And maybe she was just going to like, use discretion to be like, yo, that was my job and I'm not trying to put your business on blast. That's your business, but it's like also probably like, right, you're welcomed into the family, and that would have been your sister-in-law, in all intents and purposes, just your sister. So it's like you probably would have felt bad, like, well, I know we had a thing, like we had our little indiscretion while I was working as a hostess while he was married to you. So now that we're family, I probably would have felt obligated to tell you like, yo, your husband kind of sucks. So I don't know. It is real sad that the situation played out the way it did, but obviously there's no happy resolution to that. The son-in-law, that girl's dad is Minako's husband, and Rika's dad is going to prison. Toshi lost the woman he loved, didn't even get to marry her. Like I said, the sad timing. Once again, it's also got to suck. Like the moment the dad decided to give you permission is the moment is when Masahiko decided he was going to kill her. So if that decision would have been made earlier, it wouldn't have changed anything. He still would have probably gotten rid of her. It just would have happened sooner. So it was an inevitability, sadly, with the circumstances being what they are. We also end the episode, kind of ending things a little lighthearted, with Kishiro, and as well as that family never finding out the truth about Reiko. I do love Kageyama nearby watching that whole scene unfold. Um, yeah, it's also a rare case where we have an entire episode dedicated to just one case, because obviously these usually are 2 or 3 parters. So, and that was a question I think I had last episode. I might have kept it in the recording. I might have cut it out. I don't remember. I was curious whether or not these next episodes would be like a 1 or 2 parter or a 3 parter. So this is a one-off episode. So I'm assuming the next 2 episodes are going to be maybe a 2 parter, maybe. You'd assume so, but who knows? Because it definitely won't be a situation of the next 2 episodes might be one-off cases per episode, just because like with the way they typically structure this with like, okay, this is the beginning of one investigation and it bleeds over into the next episode. Not, I guess, because yeah, you could have the conclusion of one case at the beginning, and then like the 12th episode, like having the conclusion at the beginning and then like a new case, but it wouldn't make sense. So maybe in the next 2 episodes, because like I looked it up, there's only 12 episodes, so I'd assume the next 2 episodes are just one-offs, not unless it is a bigger case where it's like, well, I mean, we saw a previous, well, maybe like one episode 11 is half the investigation, and then half episode 12 is the other half of the investigation. Not unless that ends up being the case. I wonder, is it going to be something pertinent to Reiko again, considering like we are nearing the end of the season? So I'm curious if that's going to be relevant at all to this. But yeah, either way, regardless of how it all shakes up and what plays out, I'm interested to see what the next case ends up being. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.